Hi, welcome to Beauty World, the home of JOSS Franken polish. I'm Ray, welcome to my desk, and I'm going to be running you through some of the products in the range today to help you give you a better understanding and maybe some clues about how to use them a little bit better. The products that I've got today to show you are all in clear bottles just to make it a little easier for you to see them and for me to explain things. When they ship, they will ship in a different bottle, so don't be too disturbed if you see something like this rock up instead of in the clear bottle. Exactly the same product, just different packaging for shipping purposes. The start of the whole process is obviously to have an untinted lacquer base. Now, you might think that this is clear, but usually it's not, although some particular types of lacquer bases can be relatively clear. But most commonly they look a little like this, just a sort of straw colour. So what's basically in lacquer base? Principally, lacquer base is a collection of film formers, solvents, what we call a thixotropic agent, as what you might call a suspending agent, and then obviously the various tints and colours that go into that. So what's in our lacquer base? Okay, what isn't in the lacquer base is probably the better question, because these days everyone's asking for 3-free polish. This polish base is actually 5-free. That is, there is no toluene, formaldehyde, dibutyl phthalate, camphor or talasemide formaldehyde resin. All of those things have now been excluded from the base. The thixotropic agent is a very, very important part of the lacquer base because it is the suspending agent, if you like. It's called a thixotropic agent because unlike a normal suspending agent, it has a slightly different property in that when the product is in motion, i.e. when you're agitating it, the thixotropic agent thins and allows everything to mix together properly. When the product is then standing still, the thixotropic agent actually increases the viscosity of the product and holds all of the pigments and glitters in suspension. We actually have two different types of lacquer base. The standard lacquer base basically uses stereoiconium hectorite as the only thixotropic agent. We also have another base to which we add some fumed silica, and that gives it a slightly increased potential to hold up large glitters. So if you're just using your lacquer base with various tints or with SpectraFlare, I would suggest you just use the standard base. If you want to use quite large glitters, or you want to use a lot of glitter, I would suggest that you use the base with the added silica, as you'll find that you won't get as much falling out of your glitter in the product. Okay, on to the various tinters. There are lots of different pigments available in the marketplace for various types of cosmetics. Unfortunately, very, very few of these are actually suitable to go into nail polish systems because mostly they're unstable in the solvents which are used in nail polish. So we're really left with just a handful of tinters to be able to use. Okay, let's run through them quickly one by one. The titanium dioxide tinter, the white tinter, is very, very commonly used, gives you nice coverage with your particular products. I like to make my polishes so that I get good coverage on the natural nail in around 2 coats. You might want to extend that to 3 coats, and I see a lot of products on the internet where a white base has been used with glitters, and in that case you might actually have to reduce the amount of white you're using in the polish. Otherwise you'll find that your glitters are being totally drowned out. So that's one to remember. If you are using a lot of glitters with a white base, you need to reduce the amount of white that you're using in your colour. Next we have white pearl, which is actually bismuth oxychloride, and you get a nice white pearlescent finish with this. Some people do complain with this that you end up with polishes where you get some brush strokes, and that can be the case if you use too high a concentration, so you need to play with the concentration of this that you're using. Opposite of white, we go to black. Our black, for those of you that have already used it, is a very concentrated black. You don't need to use very much. You can actually dilute this down by a half and still end up with a product which gives you quite exceptional good coverage with one coat, which can be very handy if you're trying to make products which are being layered over a black base, as often the case with the colour trouble pigments. Then we move on to the reds. Red 6 tends to have a bit of an orange base, although once you start to dilute it, you will start to see it have more of a crimsony type effect. You do get medium coverage with this, so it's a product that you probably need to use a little bit more of than, say, the titanium dioxide or the black, but nevertheless you'll get nice coverage with that. Red 7 is a real crimson colour, and you'll start to get a similar sort of coverage with that as you get with the red 6. Red 34 is very highly covering product, and you won't need to use much of this at all for a lot of colours. It looks quite deep and dark in the bottle here. If you start to dilute it out substantially, you'll start to find you get lovely fuchsia and bright pink tones, and that brings it into its own as a very, very potent tint. Onto the yellow 10. Yellow 10 doesn't tend to have great covering capacity, so if you're trying to make a colour which actually ends up looking like this, you're going to end up using a lot of this tint to do it, because there is not a lot of opacity in the colour, so I wouldn't suggest you try and do that. But if you're trying to make oranges, those sort of things, you might end up combining these two together, the red 6 and the yellow 10. Yellow 5 does have quite good coverage, but as you can see, it's a golden sort of yellow rather than the bright yellow that the yellow 10 is. One of my favourite colours actually comes from mixing this particular colour with the fluoro pink tinter to produce quite a neon orange, and if you want to mix those roughly in equal parts, or maybe a little more of the yellow 5, you'll end up with quite fluorescent looking oranges to play with. Blue 1 is a light blue tinter. Looks dark enough in the bottle here, but doesn't have a lot of covering capacity, so it can be handy in particular colours where you are combining this blue with, say, a blue glitter, and you still want to be able to see your blue glitter. That can be handy in that respect. If you want to make a colour that looks like this and you're only using this, you're going to end up using a lot of this tint to be able to do it. Other end of the spectrum, ferric ferronocyanide is quite a very, very deep dark blue, and you'll find it has pretty good covering capacity, so you won't need to use much of it. The fluoro pink tinter, I've already mentioned it. It gives a beautiful pink colour. You do tend to find with this that there is a reduction in the normal glossiness of the nail lacquer itself when you're using these. You tend to get matte effects when you're using these particular fluorescent type products, because they're not true pigments as these other pigments are regarded. These are actually dyes which are encased in a resin which is quite stable in the nail polish base. And last but not least, another tinter that we have is the Spectraflare 2% tinter. Now, Spectraflare unfortunately is pretty expensive for us here in Australia, but it does produce beautiful holographic products. This product that we produce is made at 2%. Most Spectraflare polishes on the market are usually made at around 1%. So I would suggest that you dilute this by at least a half, so that you can, and you'll still get a good holographic effect. Lots of people email me and say, okay, I've never done this before, where do I start? It's very difficult to answer the question easily, because it depends upon the end result that you want to achieve. I like to make my polishes so that you get good coverage with just 2 coats, but that's not always possible depending upon the combination of products that you use. As a rough starting point, I would suggest that you purchase some of the small 50ml bottles that are on the website, and a reasonable starting point would be to say take around about 10 mils of the untinted lacquer base, add say 3 or 4 mils of the red 6, then maybe some glitter and or some pearlescent products. Maybe you're going to add a small amount of white pearl to give yourself a small amount of pearlescence. So maybe 10 mils, 3 mils, 1 mil, add that together and then test that on your nail to see what degree of opacity you actually achieve. And can you achieve the opacity that you want to achieve within a certain number of coats that you want to achieve it. If you're not achieving the opacity that you want, then obviously you need to go back and add some more tinter. I would suggest you err on the side of caution to begin with. You can always add more colour in. Once colour's in, you can't take it back out. So that's basically where it's at. With the SpectraFlare, I would suggest that you start with maybe 5 mils of the SpectraFlare tinter, add another 3 mils of the untinted lacquer base, and then if you wanted to make, say, a pink holographic, I would add just 2 mils of red 34, maybe even only 1 mil of red 34, and then test and then go back and see if you need to add more untinted lacquer base, more red 34. The other thing that you might need to do once you've finished playing with all of the various ingredients is actually go back and make sure that you've got a small amount of polished solvent. Some of these bases do require slight thinning for best application onto the nail. So that's it. I hope you enjoy it. I hope I can bring you some more of these videos in the future to help you better understand how to get the best out of these products. Thanks, have a great time inventing, and I'd love to see your pictures. If you want to post them on our Facebook page, by all means, just go to JOSS Franken Polish on Facebook and you'll find us. Take care.